Marfrig, nossa marca é azul, mas o nosso sonho é verde. Alimentamos o mundo e temos a consciência de cuidar desse mundo e de levar para você produtos mais sustentáveis. Por isso, estamos assumindo um conjunto de compromissos. Controle de toda a nossa cadeia de fornecimento. Inclusão de fornecedores a práticas mais sustentáveis. Combate ao desmatamento na Amazônia. Tudo com total transparência. Há muito trabalho a fazer, mas estamos comprometidos em chegar lá. Marfrig, nossa marca é azul. Nosso sonho é verde.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning in this webinar. I just wanted to go over our agenda. First, we're going to have the words from the president of the board, the chairman of the board, rather. So, good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. To us, this is a very important moment as Marfrig, so I do count on you over this webinar. I'm going to give you the agenda first. We're going to start with the words from the chairman of the board and the majority shareholder, and then Miguel Goulart, the CEO at Marfrig, and then I'll present briefly a plan that will also be available on our website so that you can refer to later on. And then we're going to have a panel that will be led by Roberto Vac, our board member, and also a coordinator of our sustainability committee. In this panel, we're going to have Just, the CEO of Global IDH. We're going to have Dr. Daniel Azeredo. We're going to have Mauricio Volvodic, the executive director of WWF. We're going to have Maristela Miguel, a rancher who also leads the Institute Produce, Protect, and Innovate, and also going to have Tasso Azevedo, the general coordinator of Met Biomas. So let's have a very good event. Thank you very much for your presence. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. In our history, the social and environmental issues have always been present. Our objective goes beyond mitigating social and environmental impacts. We understand and we act to broaden the positive effects and thus contribute towards social and economic development, and also for the maintenance and recovery of biodiversity in the territories where we operate. I'm truly convinced that the conservation of our biomes, especially the Amazon region, is a key requirement for the future of our society. In 2009, we took on the commitment towards zero deforestation in the Amazon region. In order to fulfill that commitment, we have developed a monitoring system that controls 100% of our direct suppliers in the region. We are talking about over 28 million hectares that are monitored every time cattle is purchased, 16,000 farms verified, an area greater than the UK. We created a production system that is certified. We have rainforest and also low carbon emission, zero carbon, along with Embrapa. We've invested 260 million reais in sustainability over the past 10 years. And we're going to double that amount in the forthcoming years. We know that we need to broaden this vision in our operations for the next few years. Our objective is the maintenance and the recovery of our forests. We are fully aware that supporting ranchers and growers for them to adopt sustainable practices is really vital. We are also aware that inclusion measures that will control those ranchers will be part of our success. Actually, the success of any initiative that aims at preserving the biome. We know that total traceability will contribute towards environmental preservation and also to improve food safety and health. Thus, it will be easier for Brazil and for Brazilian beef to open new international markets. Marfrig is part of the solution, and we are here today to reaffirm our commitment, the commitments that have been taken since 2009. That's why Marfrig publicly presents its 5-year plan with a vision up to 2030. This is a plan that has been developed since late last year in a partnership with IDH. That plan is based on complete traceability, our supply chain, the urgent need to include ranchers in a sustainable production system, and total fight against deforestation, as well as transparency, so that the whole of society can monitor our plan. We know that this path can be faster if we all work together. And Marfrig is ready to contribute and engage each link in that supply chain: government, ranchers, clients, consumers, civil society, and research institutions. We believe that with an appropriate joint effort, Brazil, that already produces meat with quality and safety, will have a more sustainable cattle production, low carbon, that is traceable and free of deforestation. All of us from Marfrig that help feed the world will also take care of this world. Good morning, everyone. As CEO at Marfrig, our team has a commitment, which is to dare and advance. We are fully aware that sustainability is not an option, it's the only option. To advance in fundamental topics to ensure sustainable production while respecting the environment. That involves the preservation of our forests, which is an asset of our whole society. Our commitment is also to dare in a plan that addresses the challenges of our supply chain with traceability, providing with our clients and consumers with transparency about the origin of our products. We have to be close to the ranchers. We truly believe that inclusion is the biggest ally of conservation. In order to preserve our biomes, we need good practices. And those good practices must be accessible to all ranchers, and they require access to financial resources, technical assistance, genetic improvement, animal nutrition, and more efficient monitoring technologies. We are ready to seek and establish the necessary partnerships to implement those improvements. I repeat, we are aware of our responsibilities and we will gear our best efforts to be up to the challenges. To do that, we have a plan that has all our support to be executed. Do count on Marfrig. I will now present our 5-year action plan to you, our objectives, our targets. We believe that they are quite bold and they match an urgent need we have in Brazil so that our production that thrives should also be totally free of deforestation. At Marfrig, we believe it is possible to produce more without felling a single tree. So preserving our biomes, especially the Amazon and the Cerrados, are savannas in Brazil. And this is important when we think of society as a whole. We have a very complex context, and I think we had an important landmark in 2009 with the creation of the report Farra do Boi by Greenpeace. That's when a very important movement began, a movement that made the whole country and the whole production supply chain and all the links in the supply chain in the country, it made all of them take action. That's very important for our exports, for our economy, and above all, it's important for conservation itself and the recovery of the biomes that we have in Brazil. But before that, I would like to talk to you about the size of our cattle in Brazil, of our livestock. It's important to see the size of that livestock so that we associate the effective conservation of our biomes. Our livestock accounts for 8.5% of our GDP. $115 billion. We have more cattle than people, 213 head of cattle. Brazil slaughtered last year 43 million head of cattle, and this is a sector that has 2.6 million cattle ranchers. 2.6 million cattle ranchers dedicated to beef cattle. So over 50% of rural producers dedicate their activity to livestock. It is important to preserve because 67% of our country still has native vegetation coverage. 60% of the coverage of the country are forests. And crop and livestock farming accounts for 30%. So how do we cope with all of that? From everything we have already lost in terms of native vegetation, how can we recover it? And these are the challenges that we are presented with. A question that always arises is, where is livestock? Where is the cattle in Brazil? We're going to see that production is heavily concentrated in those two biomes, in the Amazon region and in the Cerrado. The darker the color, the greater the livestock production. So cattle and livestock is present in those two biomes. That's why we should produce our cattle with the zero deforestation. And how can we do that as quickly as possible? And livestock is highly complex, that might be unique in the world. It's not verticalized. Livestock production in Brazil do not involve all the cycles: breeding, the cow-calf operations, and finishing, or the beef processing operation. So Brazil is quite different because we have a breeding operation, specialized ranchers in the production of the calves, others that are specialize in the cow-calf operations. And finally, we have those that dedicate their operations to the finishing of that herd so that they can be slaughtered eventually. And today, we have true visibility in the last phase. So that you know, Marfrig monitors 26 million hectares every single day whenever we buy cattle. It's the equivalent of the UK or the state of Sao Paulo. We monitor 100% in the Amazon biome, but the previous phases, the indirect suppliers, tiers 1 and 2, have low level of visibility. We are unable to have that complete traceability. We intend to do that. However, we know that we have a monumental challenge in order to have full traceability of the whole supply chain. To do that, Marfrig has been working for quite some time, for over 10 years actually, in order to turn it into a strategy in the company over the past 10 years. We have sustainability as one of our strategic pillars. If we take sustainability, which is one of the pillars, we try to work on governance. So we have a board member that is an expert, Roberto Vac, and he's also the coordinator of a sustainability committee that meets regularly to discuss and bring to the table the opportunities and the gaps that this supply chain has in Brazil. In that committee, we also have the presence of Daniel Furtado Mariuso. He was executive director of Greenpeace. Daniela Mariuso, who is the director of IDH for Brazil. And we have 5 pillars, but I will concentrate on the most important pillars addressed in this plan. And this is something that we want for the next 5 years in a 10-year perspective, controlling the origin and having livestock that will emit less greenhouse gases. As I said, we have been investing for the past 10 years. We have invested 260 million reals in sustainability. Not to mention that last year, we issued $200 million in sustainable transition bonds to buy cattle according to our sustainability policy. Throughout that period that began back in 2009, when we signed a commitment with zero deforestation in the Amazon region, a lot has been done. Last year, we started monitoring fires in the Amazon region. That was important, but we also engaged into a partnership with Embrapa to produce low-carbon beef or carbon-neutral beef. This is something we will launch in Brazil next month. However, we know that this is still not enough. We have to go beyond. And what is the model that we propose? What is the plan we propose to be developed in the forthcoming years? It starts with a new perspective, a perspective that involves conservation and inclusion gains a very important role. Over the past 10 years, the policies we have adopted have been a policy of exclusion that do not solve the problem, because if I say that this rancher can and the other one cannot provide to Marfrig or to other companies, we are telling them that they do not need to put into place the measures that are necessary for sustainable livestock production. We have to change our focus to include them. So this zero deforestation policy, inclusion is extremely important. Obviously, we will monitor and trace, but the perspective of inclusion has to be present. For that to happen, we must focus on 3 very important aspects. We must design innovative financial mechanisms, and this is a call to the whole financial system. The existing mechanisms are not enough because the small ranchers that must have the deeds of their land, sometimes they don't have access to financial resources. We also must provide technical assistance in order to improve their pasture land, to improve their genetic, animal nutrition, and technology to manage their business. Only then can they intensify their production, and they will no longer need to deforest native land. And we need controls and monitoring so that we can monitor the supply chain as a whole. And that's how the plan was developed. And what is this plan all about? As I said, it's a plan that has already begun. It has a number of actions focused on the short term, 5 years up to 2025. Our target is to trace 100% of the supply chain in the Amazon biome from breeding to finishing when the animal is ready to be slaughtered. And our focus is zero deforestation. And this is something we began back in 2009. And then we move on over that spectrum up to 2030, because we are also including the cerrados. The cerrado is very complex, and the maps to monitor the cerrado were ready a short while ago. So we are preparing our system to monitor livestock production in the cerrado. And that will happen. We will monitor not only our direct suppliers, but the whole of the supply chain, as what we do in the Amazon region. And it's also important to say that this plan is not just sequential. We don't do this and that after. It's like a mosaic. There are many actions that will be implemented simultaneously in order to address similar challenges. We are testing tools and different instruments in order to gain speed and effectiveness. We are creating a risk mitigation map, which is the overlapping of many maps so that we know the critical regions. By doing that, we can prioritize the traceability solutions. Then we can move on to other areas that present lower risk. I'm not going to speak at length about each component. This is all on our website so that you can relate to, because transparency is another commitment that we have. The idea is for everyone to monitor that as the plan is implemented. And what is the outcome? All of that will be made public, because transparency is really vital. And finally, we also expect that over the next 10 years, not only what we are doing, which is our share, we want to solve this problem, and we want to accelerate the whole system. So we purport to be the catalyst of all efforts. We want to bring investors, banks, the government, the civil society, the academia, so that together we can gain speed in what we are launching today. That's the idea, that's our mission, and these are the commitments that Marfrig has: to have a low-carbon livestock free of deforestation in the Brazilian biome with a perspective of zero deforestation. But for that to happen, once again, I would like to repeat, we need the effort of all the stakeholders, and equally important is a perspective of partnership and inclusion of ranchers, because this is what drives this wheel called Brazilian livestock production. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll turn it over to Roberto Vac, who will lead this panel with those people I have already mentioned, and they will talk about our commitments, our targets, so that together, listening to these other stakeholders, we will understand how that will impact society, and all opinions are welcome. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank our panel members. And Marcos, thank you very much for leading such an important sector to Brazil and to the world, with commitments that are part of our history, the relationship between mankind and the environment. This concerted effort has to work, and we hope the whole world can do it. As Paulo and Miguel have already alluded to, this is a significant challenge, and I understand that this challenge depends heavily on different visions and different ways how society, the academia, and the government have tackled this problem. Now we would like to listen to different perspectives and challenges that such a commitment represents. Paulo has mentioned that the plan is available online. It is the result of an effort that must be constantly assessed and improved. This commitment with zero deforestation, traceability, transparency, and social inclusion are equally important for all of that to happen. So we're going to have 5 to 6 minutes for each panel member. Mauricio will speak first. He will address the context of the possibility to participate in this webinar, bringing the perspective of an environmentalist organization. This dialogue is extremely important. I would say it is also important to discuss at this current time. I think this is a landmark for Brazilian livestock production. Marfrig has its commitments. Marfrig recognizes the problem of deforestation present in the supply chain, and it is publicly committing to solve that problem within a given time frame based on an action plan and using transparency mechanisms that will give more visibility, allowing society to monitor that journey. So it is important. This moment is important to Marfrig, and not only to Marfrig, but to livestock production as a whole. I think this has to become a reference, and I truly hope that other companies in the sector will follow suit what Marfrig is doing, also setting their targets and commitments, because we need to advance fighting deforestation in Brazil, understanding that beef production is a key factor to deforestation, but it's clear that it doesn't have to be that way, and Marfrig wants to show that it can be done differently. I think the action plan that Marfrig is proposing includes different points that are relevant in the short term to fight deforestation. Risk mapping of its indirect suppliers. At some point in time, 100% monitoring of the Cerrado suppliers, having complete traceability for direct and indirect suppliers. That is really key. And I'm glad this is in your commitment and in your action plan. One more important element, Marfrig wants to influence the sector as a whole, not only its peers, but also the government, convincing people that it's important to bring about structural changes and to ask companies what they will do to eliminate deforestation. And its commitments, I have a few comments about your commitments. And these are messages I would like to convey to Marfrig, but to the sector as a whole. So this is a broad comment that is not restricted to Marfrig, but to its peers as well that are also joining us today. So the targets for the Amazon region are to eliminate deforestation by 2025. It's important to have such a clear objective with a specific deadline. I truly hope this acts as a reference to the sector. Obviously, as an environmentalist organization, we would like to see that happening before. It is doable. It is doable to do it before, and Marfrig can define actions in order to achieve that goal even before. But I would like to highlight that for some sources of animals, above all, illegal land occupation and indigenous land, exclusion in those areas is still a must because these are illegal operations. So to my mind, it would be important for the company to define a short-term target to eliminate controversial sources from its supply chain. As for the target for the Cerrado, I thought it was very important to see the Cerrado appearing in that conversation. This is all very meaningful. Historically, the discussions about zero deforestation in the meat supply chain were restricted to the Amazon region. So I commend the company for including the Cerrado in that discussion. Nonetheless, the target of eliminating deforestation in the Cerrado by 2030 falls short of what we expect, because that biome has accelerated loss of native vegetation. This is a heavily threatened biome, and to wait until 2030, it's too long. So this is my comment, perhaps a challenge. Perhaps you should rethink in the forthcoming months and years that target for 2030 for the Cerrado biome. One more important point for the Cerrado is the cutoff date. For the Amazon region, it was 2009, and that generated a number of important actions in fighting deforestation. After that cutoff date was defined, it would be extremely important for Marfrig to also define a cutoff date for the Cerrado. In my mind, 2020, it can't be in the future because it generates a gold rush. I think that cutoff date should be defined and communicated, and then define actions based on that cutoff date. This is also a recommendation not only to Marfrig, but to the whole sector that buys and produces beef in that threatened biome. And to conclude, I would like to once again emphasize transparency and the commitment with transparency mentioned by Marfrig. That will be of utmost importance so that as civil society, we can celebrate the achievements, we can discuss the challenges, and try and find proactive solutions. And I have a final request. This transparency should include not only the results achieved, but also the data. The data from your production, your suppliers, and the origins, because based on the data, civil society, society as a whole, and your peers will be able to monitor and support Marfrig along that journey in a process that must involve everyone, that goes beyond the borders of the company. Thank you very much for inviting me. Greetings to everyone. Thank you, Mauricio. I'm going to turn it over to Tasso, the coordinator of MAP Biomas, estimating greenhouse gas emissions in Brazil. Tasso, could you shed some light on the challenges in managing our territory? Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to try not to repeat what was said by the previous speakers. First, I would like to commend Marfrig for this initiative. This document is quite solid and clear in the commitments the company is taking on, as it should be. I think it's pretty straightforward and extremely important. especially in the current times in Brazil. It's very important to have clear commitments. I should also mention that we have to combine low-carbon livestock and deforestation related to that. Those two elements are highly connected. Fighting deforestation alone will not solve the problem of greenhouse gases. I think the combination of those two initiatives is healthy and welcome. So that we understand this challenge, which is to eliminate deforestation among your direct and indirect suppliers by 2025 in the Amazon region and then by 2030 in the Cerrado. I agree with Mauricio. I think that target for the Cerrado could be moved up a little. There is no reason why the same control mechanisms shouldn't be applied in the Cerrado. There are very few things that would be significantly different for the Cerrado. And when issues are solved for the Amazon biome, the same measures could be implemented in the Cerrado. So my suggestion is to move up this target date for the Cerrado. Something important for today is that the instruments that we have today to monitor, be it deforestation, land use, licenses, and the very existence of the farms, everything that is related to monitoring is a lot more available than what we had 10 years ago when that conversation began. So today, we have different tools to monitor deforestation at different levels, classifying information at different levels. And these tools are transparent and available for all biomes in Brazil. We have monitoring of land use changes. We know not only what used to be forest and what is no longer forest, but also when that happened, what did that transition into? We do have that clarity today. And finally, we have the CAR, the Rural Registry. We know where the rural properties are, who is there, and the level of environmental compliance that we have in those properties. All those tools are available to be used in a monitoring system that will allow us to advance in the two pillars of our agenda. First, low-carbon livestock production. We can monitor the quality of pasture land. We can monitor the crop and livestock integration and other aspects in these monitoring tools that are available. Besides, in this process towards traceability, there are either new or existing elements that can be adapted, like Singaflor, the forestry information system that has all the permits, the irregularities in the rural system. And all that information is available. Obviously, there is a lot that must be made available. Besides CAR and GTA, also a key element to promote full traceability. I think the challenge here is in bringing the public sector to the agenda being proposed by Marfrig. I'm not saying that that can be done without the participation of the public sector. The public sector has evolved slowly and been contradictory at times. But this fight towards transparency in the public sector, and this is an old struggle, especially in the third sector. So transparency in the public sector should be incorporated in this strategy. For example, we need transparency in our rural registry. We should know who deforested. We must know the social security number of whoever is associated with the deforested area. And then control animal shipment with the rural registry, because every head of cattle came from a farm. I would like to conclude by saying the following. Eliminating deforestation in our supply chains in Brazil, and livestock production plays a very important role. Deforestation is the main factor preventing Brazil for becoming the biggest environmental powerhouse in the world. And being that environmental powerhouse is perhaps our passport to become a protagonist in the world, not only because of power, but taking a leading role for being a country that contributes towards the well-being and the development, sovereign development, not only of our country, but contributing to the whole planet. And this is a place that we deserve and where we should be. I think we are going through rough patches right now. Especially when the public sector is not helping position Brazil appropriately. Companies have now the chance to take the leadership in that commitment, ensuring that Brazil follows the right track. And I consider this initiative taken by Marfrig as part of that movement, so I would like to commend you for that. Thank you, Tasso. I would like to turn it over to Maristela Miguel. She is a 4.0 rancher, third generation of ranchers with a farm in Mato Grosso, a pioneer in concrete actions to maintain the forest alive. She's the founder of an NGO, and she chairs BCI, the Produce, Preserve, and Include Institute. You have 5 to 6 minutes. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Marfrig for inviting me to participate. For me, it's super important to be here because, as Roberto introduced myself, I wear 3 hats. I'm a farmer, I'm a rancher, I'm president of PCI, a public policy of the Mato Grosso state take on during COP21, promoting zero deforestation at state level. It's a state that voluntarily took on that commitment during a COP. And I'm also president of EcoArts, a non-for-profit organization in the state of Mato Grosso that was created on our family farm. My father used to say the following. He said, use the forest, because he didn't have the vision that we have. He didn't have the idea of the value of the forest. And we have been trying to promote a transformation over the past 15 years as a PCI and as a rancher. We believe there is no such thing as environmentalists or the government. You don't have a rancher or. We have to eliminate the word or. We can only find some middle ground if we produce, we preserve sustainably, and with the entities involved. So PCI is an institute that is this middleman. And EcoArtes has been doing it for 15 years. We are the founders, and Marfrig is one of the founding members. They chose me as the president for this 2-year tenure, and we were introduced as a farm that produces, that preserves, and that includes. And we are sick and tired of blaming the government. We must have solutions. We have to go to the roots of our problems. In our territory, in the state of Mato Grosso, we must promote social feasibility to a standing forest. So I commend this action plan proposed by Marfrig, because the word action is the most important one. We have to show the market that there are many people producing legally, and we have the obligation of only using 20% of the Amazon area where we operate, and that are many people producing cattle and grains, but there are many concrete monitoring and preservation activities at EcoArtes. Since last year, we began a partnership with a company that was awarded by the United Nations. We are now integrating crop and livestock farming. And everyone can see the trees we are planting from anywhere in the world. We decided to disseminate our activities. Our latest project was with a ceramic European company, and we returned royalties to the state by planting forests inside cities. We were not able to plant in indigenous lands because of the pandemic, and we want to replant in small farms, because if we are unable to recover forests, and if we do not allow farmers to have an economic mechanism, I think there are 3 levels of farms. We have the large farms in the state of Mato Grosso, like Marfrig, and as many other companies. You have small farmers that are subsidized by a government program, PRONAF, and you have that middle level that is unassisted. And this is something we are experiencing as I speak. As my father passed away, we started promoting the integration between livestock and forests. And we were looking for financial mechanisms to plant trees. And much to our surprise, banks either required you to give the land as a collateral. We have to create innovative financial mechanisms. This is a key element. Otherwise, it will crush that middle level of growers, and you don't give them an opportunity to preserve. We have been in Mato Grosso for 50 years. I'm the 3rd generation of ranchers in Mato Grosso. There are so many activities being promoted, and we can prove we can do it. To us, the most significant challenge is the economic feasibility of a standing forest. It's nice to see that there is a large company thinking about the need of including ranchers. Perhaps they were involved in irregular activities in the past. For example, one of our neighbors invaded 15 meters of our area, and we suffered an embargo. So innovative financial mechanisms to these producers is extremely necessary and completely viable, because if everyone intends to preserve the forests, let us step out of our comfort zone, and we should stop saying we are either environmentalists or ranchers or producers, either this or that. Let us join efforts and know-how. And by doing that, we can design new solutions, as Tasso said, to turn Brazil into an environmental powerhouse. Let us think outside the box so that we play a key role in the implementation of new mechanisms to keep forests alive. I commend you for this initiative, and thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much. It's very important to have the perspective of those in the front line. I would like to turn it over to Joost. He's the CEO of IDH for a Sustainable World. He's in the Netherlands. And IDH plays a very important role in bringing together companies and the financial sector, trying to promote sustainable solutions. Joost, you have the floor.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Well, good morning to you all, and thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure. Yeah, and before I also like to express my sympathies and my thoughts with all those people affected in Brazil with COVID, and I really hope you'll get it soon under control, because it's a terrible situation, right? But on a positive note, I think we are, as IDH, we are very, very pleased and proud that we step into this 10-year plan today together with Marfrig. So it's quite a big thing, and also huge thanks to Marfrig and all the other stakeholders for making it happen, and huge thanks for Daniela and our team of IDH in Brazil. And we are very happy with this plan, and I think that was already expressed by some of the earlier speakers, is because this is a great opportunity to support the farmers and the smaller farmers to be included in the supply chain, and I think that is very important, right? We have this PCI concept: produce, conserve, include. And the inclusion part, I think, this is what this 10-year plan is all about, right? To make sure that all farmers can participate. And we have this beautiful saying, "Leave no one behind." And I think that's exactly what we aim to do with this 10-year plan. It doesn't make sense to leave people behind. Everybody should have an opportunity to be included in the system and work against the forest law and be able to produce the beef responsibly. So this is a great opportunity to achieve that. We're also very happy with this plan because it's an opportunity to support farmers also in the traceability of the company, which is great, right? That it reaches out to all the way to the farmers, which gives them a great chance to be included. And finally, because this is now also extended to the Cerrado, which I think is a great step forward by Marfrig. Yeah, I think I'm calling in from the Netherlands, from Europe, and I think this is a great step forward also for the sustainable supply chains from Brazil into Europe. I think everybody realizes that is a big issue. And I think it's great that front-runner companies like Marfrig are stepping up and showing their commitment and trying to find a way forward. If I look at Europe, then it's quite clear that with the Green Deal now under the new European Commission, the whole focus on forest and forest protection, and on the link between forest protection and sustainable trade will only become bigger and bigger in the years to come, right? So basically, this is preparing this Marfrig plans is basically preparing for that future where European consumers, but also I think increasingly the European Commission wants to make sure that what is being imported into Europe meets the demands of the consumers, and is free from deforestation, and it becomes more and more carbon neutral, right? That whole carbon thing is very high on the agenda, and again, this plan is going to help to drive that challenge. So, thanks a million for allowing us to work with you, and we very much look forward to that joint future. Some of the earlier speakers said that we should go faster, which is also good as an ambition. But I think if we under promise and over deliver, then I think that's the right spirit, and I'm sure we will be able to meet some of those targets sooner than written down. But still, I think as targets they are ambitious, and it's great to have a 10-year plan together, because that gives a vision to the future that we all need so badly. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It was nice to have your perspective also.
Que bom ter a sua perspectiva, Joost.
Event. Bom, agora eu passo então a palavra
Well,
para
now,
o Dr. Daniel Azeredo. Dr.
I
Daniel,
would like to turn it over
dos
to
nomes
Dr.
mais
Daniel
importantes
Azeredo, one of the most important names in the past few years,
secretário executivo da Câmara do Meio Ambiente.
Executive Secretary of the Environment Chamber,
Há muito
Federal
tempo
Attorney.
com esse tema, coordenou o projeto
He
Carne Legal
coordinated the Carne Legal Group
e da Câmara do Meio
and
Ambiente,
also the Environmental Sectorial Chamber launched in 2009. Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel, for joining us today.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
Eu que agradeço o convite.
I have to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to participate in this event. I'd like to commend Marfrig for the initiative, for the targets, for setting 2025 as a target for the Amazon supply chain.
Há vários anos,
The Federal Attorney's Office has said for many years that it's impossible to do away with deforestation in the Amazon region, or at least to get to a minimum deforestation level without complete traceability of what is produced there. When I'm asked, why do people deforest the Amazon region if we have so much technology, if we have inspection mechanism, the police force, technical teams, what's the problem? What generates deforestation? If I could summarize that into a single answer, I would say that those deforesting the next day will sell what was deforested as legal products. So environmental crimes will invade public land and will sell their products as legal products. And they will pay taxes issuing an invoice. And that gives them an appearance of legality. So that is the economic scenario that we must fight. And we must do away with that once and for all. And without traceability, that is impossible. Only complete traceability will allow us to do that, knowing where each animal comes from, where each piece of wood comes from, so that those committing environmental crimes will not get away with their crimes. In the specific case of livestock, studies still show that it's still number one culprit of deforestation in the Amazon region, because most of the area deforested becomes pasture land. And there is a key factor: cattle moves. So it's a complex system, but the technology we have today allows for total traceability, and it's cheap. It will not impact costs for the final consumer. What prevents us from having complete traceability? Political will or pressure from the economic market? Apparently, the pressure from the national and international economic market is already there. It came even before the public will. In Brazilian livestock production, since 2009, companies have evolved, like Marfrig, that signed the Meat Pact with the Public Prosecutor's Office, and this generated significant deforestation reduction. In 2012, it got to 4,600 kilometers. But we do not have complete traceability in the beef supply chain. Beef is still scores 7. There are serious problems. Indirect suppliers, as mentioned before, they are not monitored yet. The second point, the exchange of cattle among direct suppliers. An irregular farm will land its record to a farm that is producing irregularly. Even companies that produce regularly, they bring illegal cattle into their farm. So today, any farmer can create its own record, and it's not verified, and that sort of legalizes one's production. In other words, despite all efforts being made by the livestock companies, no company can truly declare that all its cattle is free of deforestation. There are flaws in the rural registry itself. So complete traceability is a must. We shouldn't embargo Brazilian production. There is a social and economic component that is very important. But we must set deadlines, 4 to 5 years, for all of that production to be the object of complete traceability. And our commitment, well, actually, we want this measure adopted by Marfrig to be followed. And traceability has to involve different entities, the federal government that may lead that process in order to make it uniform. But should there be a gap, we have the different states. And each Amazon state should take on that commitment to preserve the forests. And if state governments are not present, we have the companies that can step in, because they must take care of their international market. So traceability can come from any front. That's why Marfrig's initiative is really praiseworthy. And we hope it will be emulated by the public entities, by the other private sector companies, and that it promotes transparency, because only with 100% traceability we will be able to achieve our goals. Thank you very much, Daniel. In this group, we have a number of very relevant questions. Some perspectives are very important. For example, the government perspective. But what we heard was the importance of ambition and the challenges. They are part of the same equation. And this has to be a collective effort, the relevance of transparency throughout that process. And transparency, not only about actions themselves, but also the outcomes, the results, and the relationship that has with deforestation, carbon emission, and inclusion as a central pillar, not only in terms of environmental relations, but also in terms of social inclusion. the country does have monitoring tools. I would say that we are one of the world leaders in monitoring tools. Trying to engage the government, civil society, and companies, because we must know what is happening and what's changing in land use. A common thread in different presentations is the relevance of collaboration between the public and the private sectors. And one of the most striking points is the key role to be played by the farmers and ranchers. And they try to strike a balance between production and a standing forest. Maristela mentioned so many times that we must put that dream into practice, striking a balance between production and conservation, and we should disseminate those experiences. We talked about the importance of having innovative financial mechanisms that will value the forests. Forests are not considered collaterals by the financial system. It affects not only our sector, but also others. We also heard that very important sentence mentioned by Joost, not to leave anyone behind. So we can't have zero deforestation without that concept of not leaving anyone behind. And all of that is connected with international relations, the role the country plays across the globe, and how our commitments are related to the new Green Deal, perhaps a new economic scenario that we see unveiling in the post-COVID area. And we must have a unique competitive position. And we also heard the repeated relevance of complete traceability throughout the supply chain and how it is related with illegal logging, illegal cattle production, and the importance of government entities. We are receiving a number of questions. I'll forward them to you. But one of the points I was sent came from Turnaban Garcia, a former vice minister. I'd like to show you this video. It's important to have a diversity of stakeholders discussing and the relevance of the government as well. Can we watch this short video and then we can open for questions and we can start entertaining the questions that we are receiving. Certainly we can't answer them all. Marfrig's commitment is in 10 days to have all those questions with the answers available on their website, and with the objective of being totally transparent. So let us watch this short video. If you have any technical problem, I can move forward and then we can watch the video later. Paulo, I'm going to ask you the following. There is an important point that came about coming from one of the main actors in this scenario, Greenpeace. And the question is, Greenpeace in 2009 committed to control indirect suppliers by 2011. You are now announcing that we will only do it by 2030. Could you talk about this question? Paulo, are you there?
Oi.
Can you hear me?
Sim.
Yes.
Não, sem dúvida.
Sure.
Acho que é mais ou menos o que eu já tinha dito.
This is pretty much what I said previously. Marfrig has had that commitment since 2009.
Conseguiu, na verdade, efetivar o compromisso do desmatamento zero.
All this work reiterated this zero deforestation target to our direct suppliers, but we have an enormous difficulty in having total traceability for the whole of the supply chain due to several factors. The livestock market, it's a spot market. You don't have a contract with the producers. There is daily purchase taking place. So you need to know from each rancher the supply chain behind them, and that's the complexity behind it. It is hard to apply to indirect suppliers what we apply to our direct suppliers. We will need a concerted effort involving all producers, so much so that nobody has managed to do that so far. There has been many attempts, many pilot projects, and obviously we would love to have achieved that, but we were unable to do it so far. But we are committing to that right now because we believe that the conditions are there, and that's the most important point. And you might ask, why haven't you been able to do it? Most importantly is what we are doing right now that will allow us to get there. So that you understand, when you have one producer, you have from 5 to 10 others that are associated to that. If you have 16,000 suppliers in the Amazon biome, that includes over 100,000 suppliers. So it's a highly complex supply chain, and it doesn't involve just technology. That's the significant challenge that we have, but we believe it's doable. And even if it was not done before, we will do all it takes so that we can do it moving forward. That's basically it. Thank you, Paulo. Is the video ready? Just let me know. There is a question addressed to Maristela. Your father unfortunately passed away not long ago and left you with a farm with a production and a conservation area. What would you say to a farmer that inherited an intact forest that would like to produce cattle to be sold to Marfrig? Even if the forestry code allows you to deforest 20% of the area, how would you deal with the restrictions that we are discussing right now? I love the question. The first thing I must say is, do not lose faith. We can think differently. There are many people, especially in Mato Grosso, where we operate, trying to think outside the box, trying to create different mechanisms. People tend to think in different silos: crop production, cattle, and the forest. I would like for these mechanisms to be better structured, and I'm speaking not only of commercial banks, but even funds, and I do apologize if there is anybody from a green fund listening to us. These funds are so green or so unripe that we can't even access them. So, what are you doing in the Amazon region? We have a group of people who meet to consider mechanisms that will bring financial return to the region. For instance, parica, a native species. You can enrich your space with parica. I'm a lawyer. I apologize if I'm naming the wrong species. Now there is a new type of tree being planted. Do we need to plant a species that is not native in that region? We have such a diversity that is not well explored. Each area is really specific. So what is your natural vocation? That's the first point. Do you need to deforest everything and have only produce cattle? Perhaps a native species can be transformed into financial return. I would love to tell you that by preserving 80% of your area, you will be paid for environmental services. But this is a market that is still crawling. I would like for those mechanisms to be ready, and those preserving the forest should be compensated for that. You are only using 20% of the area. Where are those who say we must preserve the forest? We must create financial mechanism that will allow people to preserve and not deforest. So do not lose hope. Call me. Later on, I would like to listen to Mauricio and Tasso. A question to Daniel. We have issues related to the quality of the rural ag registry. How do you think that government institutions, how do you think these institutions can be more active in that system, controlling illegal activities? How can we better use the available database to promote a greater traceability? So if Mauricio could think about that question as well. A key measure to be adopted by the government, especially when we talk about the pressure from the international market. May I continue? So an important measure to be adopted by the government in order to respond to this pressure by the international market would be a broad and complete traceability program for the Amazon region, and then extend that to the other biomes in the country. It's a measure that will not just represent cost, it will improve the image of Brazil. Abroad, you have DOC, the denomination of origin that exists for wine, for instance. Why is it that Brazilian beef and soybeans cannot be valued if we have a certification of origin. And Brazil does have good rules about the environment. The problem is that these rules are not complied with. But if you start complying with those rules, you tend to value the domestic product. And before having total traceability, which would be the necessary and final solution to the environmental problems in the Amazon region, I don't think we can eliminate deforestation if we do not have complete traceability. So providing complete traceability to the rural registry. We have very advanced laws about transparency. Every check you write is available online, so why is it that the rural records are not? We should have integrated system because illegal activities are mingled with the legal activities. Less than 2% of all farmers in Brazil are involved in illegal deforestation. The majority is doing the right job and being penalized. Why? Because we are unable to differentiate and show who's legal and who's illegal. Thank you very much. Apparently the video is now okay. And next, I would like to listen to Marcelo and Daniela, and then we come back to the panel for a few more questions. I think we have another 5 to 10 minutes. Brazil is a country that can be the food basket of the world. We have over 200 million head of cattle. We have green cattle in Brazil. The time has come for a partnership between the production system, government and non-government institutions, the industry, and we should showcase the world that Brazil does have that potential. We must all sit together around the same table humbly and lay a plan for Brazil. Do away with bureaucracy, do what's in the law, punish what's outside the law, and then society and the world will see that we are heading towards achieving sustainable beef production, green beef, healthy food. So this is the path we want to follow in Brazil. With this partnership, we will certainly get there. Thank you very much for the video. Marcelo, could you make your comments perhaps in 1 minute? I know it's very little time. Thank you very much, Roberto. Let me begin by saying that we can't imagine the future with over 80,000 deaths and 600,000 deaths in the world without change in the past. And this commitment announced by Marfrig goes in that direction. I have an 18-year-old daughter. If I asked her, how do you summarize that? She would say 2 words. The first word she would say is that it took too long, or the first expression. Because what we heard from several people is that society has been demanding that for quite some time. The sector advanced, evolved, but hasn't solved the problem. I think we should draw a line saying it is doable and when it's going to be done. If we do that, we will show courage, leadership, humility in admitting you can't do it alone. And solidarity is an important word. We have to work together, as several have said. But we don't find that willingness of working together. I think with these mobilizations of investors, CEOs, former ministers, civil society, we are now creating a concrete possibility to promote a joint action to achieve that positive result. The second term, my daughter would say, is it's about time. Leadership and proactivity are very important right now, especially today. We have to transform that robust and invaluable commitment into concrete actions. We should demonstrate that. If you ask me what changed since 2009 when I met Molina representing Greenpeace when that commitment was signed, after the Farra do Boi report was put out, I would say that the difference is that back then there were two sides of the table. Marfrig was on the one side of the table, civil society on the other side, so was the producers. So were the producers. Today we see that we are together in this, unfortunately in a live discussion, not in a room, but we are together around a virtual table, speaking freely and transparently about positive aspects, challenges, challenging deadlines, recognizing that there is this joint willingness to make it happen. So I would like to commend you for this initiative. Thank you. Thank you, Marcelo. Daniela Mariuso, if you could make a few comments. Sure thing. Can you all hear me? I think so. I would like to say good afternoon to everyone. I hope you're all well. To me, I've been in the livestock business for 20 years, and I usually say I'm blessed for having an opportunity to know what cattle ranchers do and how wonderful this cycle is. Transforming grasses into animal protein. It's fantastic, and many people in the world do not know that, and this is our job. Why am I saying that? People must understand that farmers and ranchers are human beings. They have to make decisions, and those decisions have to be made as the decisions in any other sector, based on reason, in the compliance of the law, and assessing whether or not that will be good for their business. As IDH, we are neutral actors. Once again, we must promote a dialogue, trying to build solutions to the farmers who are interested in preserving the native vegetation beyond what's required by the law, for them to have opportunities if they want to be compensated by environmental performance. This project is not easy. It hasn't been done before. If it had been done before, it would be ready. We must create bonds of trust with all links in the supply chain. I've been trying to do that for 20 years, and I hope that under the leadership of Marcos Molina, we will be able to deliver that dream, which is to have payments for environmental services. And I believe that yesterday we saw an important announcement, and as Marcelo's daughter would say, it's high time. Banks have always denied the possibility of taking forests as collaterals. And those who take the first step will be the leaders along with us. We should no longer fear to try and build things that were not there before. If we get it wrong, we try it again. That's my message. Thank you, Daniela. Tasso, and then after Mauricio, if you could summarize everything you said. It would be
Coloquem
nice.
o que vocês acham que possa ser relevante agora.
So what would you say as a summary?
Não sei se...
Pode ir, Tasso, tá no ar.
Tasso, you can go first.
Tá. Não sei se eu não estou lembrando se a pergunta. Se a pergunta é aquela de uma área 100%,
Isso.
Are you talking about 100% traceability?
O que eu diria é, pensa ela como floresta, não pensa ela como outro uso.
Think about your area as a forest. We already have enough area to producing without deforesting anything. We have so much degraded pasture land. There is no point deforesting any more area.
Se realmente o desejo é trabalhar com atividade pecuária, procura uma área.
And if you want to work with livestock, look for an area that is already there, where you don't need to deforest anything. And find degraded pasture land and try and recover it. What we call regenerative agriculture. As a final comment, I would like to say the following. The elimination of deforestation in our supply chains should be an obsession of the rural sector. The Ministry of Agriculture should have that as one of the main targets, because this is the topic that most threatens the development of that sector, not only because of the image this brings to Brazil, because deforestation has consequences on the water system in Brazil. There is scientific evidence showing that connection between deforestation and the lack of water. That will have an impact on our irrigation capability. So the idea of eliminating deforestation and having livestock production that is not based on deforestation is really key to the sector. And even today, when we think about the government structure, in the Ministry of Agriculture, we have three of the major mechanisms that are necessary to eliminate deforestation from the supply chain, namely GAT, which is the animal transportation document, also the rural registry, also managed by the Ministry of Agriculture. If we make it transparent, creating the connection between the two, it would be a very important step forward. And it can be done in the short term. There is no technical restriction. It's more of a political decision and the regularization of land use. Suffice to have proper land use documentation and rural credit as well. Rural credit only deals with the embargoed areas, and it should be incorporated to the whole system. We should condition rural credit to the lack of deforestation. Not only that, but also trying to promote low-carbon agriculture. The idea is not to promote the word environmentalist. We should all be environmentalists.
vai estar sempre apoiando e
Obviously,
tal, mas também torcendo para que isso
we must
possa dar bem
support
final.
one another.
Obrigado, Tasso.
Thank you, Tasso.
A gente tem que estar caminhando para o fim.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. There are so many questions. As I said, all questions will be answered and posted on the Marfrig website.
Uma fala do Arnaldo E5, mas antes talvez Maurício você pudesse dar
Mauricio, if you could just make your final comments.
extremamente importante a fala do produtor e o Arnaldo pode representar isso. Maurício, se você puder então fazer os
Claro.
final remarks.
Mauricio, your final remarks.
Rapidamente, indo na mesma linha do Tasso, do Dr. Daniel Azeredo.
Along the same lines
Desmatamento no Brasil
Tasso mentioned, it is clear that deforestation in Brazil benefits a few and penalizes many.
dessa ação, dessa
The
atividade,
elimination
expansão da agropecuária
of
da floresta, precisa
deforestation
realmente se tornar uma prioridade
has
da
to
sociedade
become a
brasileira.
priority for Brazilian
Graças a
society,
Deus, cada tem a sua parte,
and
como eu disse, isso
all
só vai
actors should
acontecer
play their
mediante
role,
a
and
ação
this will
coletiva.
only happen if we have a
Cada
concerted
cidadão tem a sua
effort.
parte, a gente vai fazer
Civil
a nossa
society
parte,
has to play a role.
da Marfrig,
We will do
em
our share.
acompanhar, em observar, em
We
discutir
will
soluções de forma conjunta.
monitor and be along with Marfrig.
As outras empresas do setor devem
I
ter
think
essa
other
parte,
companies in the sector should also do the same. They should take on
também.
this commitment.
E o governo tem a sua parte também, como foi bem
And the
apontado
government,
pelas falas.
as mentioned
Chegou a
before,
hora realmente
the
de
time has come
98% dos produtores brasileiros que não se beneficiam do desmatamento também
to do the right thing.
orientar para essa questão e a gente conseguir realmente
Because 98% of the producers and farmers are not involved in illegal deforestation.
nacional e internacional.
Brazilian livestock production has to become this international powerhouse. I would like to thank you for the opportunity, and I'd like to congratulate Marfrig. Arnaldo, he is the CEO of Agro Jacarezinho, a large agribusiness company. And Arnaldo brings an important perspective, which is the relationship between breeding and everything related to environmental change. He can talk about monitoring deforestation and other relevant perspectives. Unfortunately, it is impossible to discuss it all. There are too many questions. They will be answered and posted on the Marfrig website. But we should close this event with a perspective from a farmer and producer. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be in this very important event promoted by Marfrig. All of us from Agro Jacarezinho as Maristela said, we are moving towards action. What do we do in order to improve the genetics of the Nelore cattle in Brazil? We are shortening the cycle of livestock. What are we doing to contribute to this discussion? We are providing genetics that will shorten that cycle. We have been able to eliminate the cow-calf operations from the process. So we have breeding, cow-calf, and finishing. We are eliminating the cow-calf operations, bringing a genetic that will allow animals to be slaughtered at an earlier age. Animals will be ready in a much shorter period of time. We are along with IDH in the regions where they operate, and our commitment is to include the unincluded and to increase the revenue per hectare of those that are included in the system in such a way that they no longer need to put pressure on the various biomes as the Cerrado. And in this project, along with IDH, all the offspring will be bought, all the small animals will be bought and will be traced. So the world will know where those animals came from, how they were bred, and Marfrig will know exactly where that beef came from. Everything will be traced and controlled. With a significant advantage, we will eliminate part of that cycle in such a way that we have less pressure, we become more profitable, we show more profitability, 20% more profitability than in regular livestock production. And that will prevent farmers from acting illegally. All of us at Agro Jacarezinho have been making this contribution. We are already present in most states, and we are now entering the state of Mato Grosso, providing this genetic for the Nelore breed that will put less pressure on carbon emission and more revenue to the farmers. So this is an extremely important tool for this significant project promoted by Marfrig, aiming at zero deforestation. I agree with what was said here today. Producers should be able to make more money if animals are traced from the very beginning. Farmers will have a greater revenue per square meter. This is what I wanted to share with you. Another project we just began was the crop and livestock integration. Another very important tool that we are beginning. Agro Jacarezinho has just acquired some land to serve as a model for this crop and livestock integration. We will be able to offer small farmers to visit us and see the potential of that crop and livestock integration. It can reduce carbon emission. Thank you very much. Well, we have come to the end of this event. I would like to thank our panel members and especially the organizers promoting such an important moment for Brazil and the world. We could certainly spend a lot more time, but complete traceability and inclusion and the relationship between traceability and inclusion with technology, as we heard, financial inclusion, the inclusion of training programs to small and middle-sized producers. We need transparency so that this path is paved along with society, reducing pressure and using all the knowledge available. That's the path we must trail to get to zero deforestation. And I think we are heading towards that. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And we will continue our discussions. In the next few days, Marfrig will post all this information and even the 5-year plan on their website. And you're all invited to continue participating in this such important journey. Thank you all very much. And this is a wrap. Thank you.
Marfrig. Nossa marca é azul, mas o nosso sonho é verde. Alimentamos o mundo e temos a consciência de cuidar desse mundo e de levar para você produtos mais sustentáveis. Por isso, estamos assumindo um conjunto de compromissos. Controle de toda a nossa cadeia de fornecimento. Inclusão de fornecedores a práticas mais sustentáveis. Combate ao desmatamento na Amazônia. Tudo com total transparência. Há muito trabalho a fazer, mas estamos comprometidos em chegar lá. Marfrig, nossa marca é azul, nosso sonho é verde.